All right, well, thank y'all so much for having me here. I've been really inspired. I know Jess, and I'll hear stories from Jess, but just hearing y'all tell them was so powerful, and I just want to thank you all so much because I feel really moved by everything that you all are doing, and I really would love to talk to some of y'all later and hear more. First of all, I just want to say some very quick thank yous, and the reason I want to do that is because we're all here as part of a web, right? And if we acknowledge the web, that's the only thing that's going to save us from things that are happening. I really believe that. Like, if we're going to have any kind of major future, it's that we constantly acknowledge the web around us and everything that we do, right? So there's a woman named Julia who's currently staying at my house right now taking care of my 24 chickens and 8 ducks and 2 dogs and all this. So I couldn't be here without Julia, and I just want to thank Jess and everyone at the McElroy house who I had a conversation with before I came about what I was going to talk about, and I had planned to have their pictures up here so y'all could see that the McElroy house was a collective, but I don't know if you've heard, but we're flooding in Arkansas, where I am in the town that is hit one of the hardest hits, actually. So I had to leave a little early to go stay with a friend to get to the airport because this part of my town is underwater. And also that probably will influence a lot of the things I say today. So anyway, I just want to thank everybody who made it possible for me to be here because it was a lot of people. Okay, so I learned from one of, is that? Okay.
Go and get it over.
Okay. One of my biggest mentors is a woman named Tafaro Waller Muhammad, and she taught me a long time ago that when you go into a room of people that you don't know, you always need to let people know where you're from and who your people are and who you're accountable to. Okay, so I'm going to tell you just a little bit about where all of that stuff. I'm from, like I said, Darnell. It's got 4,500 people. We live right across the river, which now you can't drive back and forth, but we live right across the river from a town that's larger called Russellville. It's about 24,000 people. There's a county line and a lot of money that divides those two towns. I am on the less money side, but we have a wonderful community and everyone's coming together right now, and I'll tell you all a little bit more about that. But so I live in a little bit of a hybrid. There's some rural nature to where I'm from. There's also a little bit of an urban environment. We have a college there that was an agricultural school. Now it is an actual state college. So it's a bit of a hybrid between rural and urban. But I personally live out in a rural community. My family's been in Arkansas for about 7 generations. The land that I live on is rightfully Quapaw land. And part of my family comes from the Ozarks, and then the other part of my family comes from what we call the Bottoms. So that's a little bit about where I come from. Who I'm accountable to. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about who I'm accountable to, and I want y'all to be thinking about who you're accountable to. So I'm accountable to my hometown, to the McElroy house, to rural church people, to farmers, to black organizers in Little Rock, to immigrant communities that have recently come to our community. I'm accountable to white people who are trying to do better and don't know how yet, and are looking to learn. I'm accountable to my children and their friends. I feel certain that, we have to think about them in everything that we do. And I'm also accountable to my ancestors, many of them who upheld white supremacy as tenant farmers. I'm accountable to them because I believe I have to live differently, and I believe some of them want me to do that. Some of them probably don't. Those aren't the ones I listen to. So it feels kind of surreal to be here for a couple of reasons, because a long time ago, I was living in Little Rock, which I still go back and forth out to Little Rock, and we read Chris Krause's book, Toward Collective Liberation. Yeah, right, so, and I'm reading it and I'm like, this is cool, this is great, whatever, and I get to the rural organizing section, I was like, oh my gosh, and I just flip out, because it was all this stuff that I've been trying to think about, and I've been trying to name, and trying to figure out how to do, and put words or anything to it, And so we were really influenced by the living room and kitchen conversations that you all do. The McElroy House uses that all the time now. We do that all the time. So it is like really humbling to be asked to be here, because I'm like, what? Like, I'm learning from you guys. Like, so one of our first living room conversations was around some white supremacist organizing, and I should say the community I live in is very conservative. I'm sure y'all are all familiar with me, but I'm very conservative. So we, the community is, I'm not. But anyway, and so, but we had this living room conversation, and our framing was, what will the children expect of us? All right, so that was our framing for some of our early living room conversations, because we know that everyone in the community wants a safe place for their kids. All right, so we start there. Okay, so I'm going to just tell you a tiny bit about what the McElroy House space is, and I'd encourage you to go onto our Facebook page. We have a web page, a blog page, but to be honest with you, we're all volunteer and no one updates it. So you should go to our Facebook page, just to be honest. You should go to our Facebook page, which is regularly updated because all of us have access to that account, and so all of us will post pictures all the time. So that's a great place to see what we're doing. So I'll tell you just. Okay, I'll tell you just a little bit about the space. It's just a small house, 720 square feet. It was built in the late 1940s. It's in a residential neighborhood. We have a special use permit from the city to use it as a nonprofit. So we're not in a business district, or we're not in a area where there's anything. It's just all houses. We have big gardens out front that get bigger every year. Every year we carve out like another. Our goal is to eventually have a wheelchair accessible path through flowers. That's the goal. We've only got about fourth of the way there, but and let's hope that it's in the path of the rising water. So I hope the garden makes it. It may or may not. If it doesn't, just build it again. But we have berries. We have butterfly and bee plants. We have food. We're not a community garden. It's not enough big enough space to where we consider ourselves a community garden, although we do give away what we produce. Mostly it's more almost like a teaching garden for people to come and see what you can do with a really small amount of space. And it's also, for kids to learn and things like that. This year we planted sorghum. Do y'all know sorghum? Is that a thing out here?
Yes.
Okay, so sorghum used to be a huge crop in the area where I'm from, and it's a sweetener. It's like a corn, and then you take it's like kind of like it's molasses. It's molasses. So anyway, we're not going to produce. We don't have the capacity to produce molasses, but we did it as a conversation starter because most people in the community that are over 50 will remember huge sorghum fields. And I don't know, there's nothing like plants to sort of segue. It's like, you like sorghum? Oh, your grandpa raised sorghum? Oh, great. How do you feel about inclusive community? Segue right on in there. So we do stuff like that. Anyways, those are, that's sort of what we do there. I'll give you a little bit more about how we use the space. But I also want to honor the idea to use this space came from a man named Michael Morrow, who I met in Russellville, Kentucky, and he was the founder of the West Kentucky African American Heritage and Genealogy Center there. I met Michael, and I worked with him as a research assistant to help get the neighborhood on the National Register of Historic Places. But for reasons I don't understand and will forever be grateful for, Michael let me hang out with him for 2 years and just follow him around. And I learned so much. Russellville, Kentucky has about 9,000 people, and it is still very racially divided. And one of the things that Michael was doing was researching history in the community that tied families directly to slavery. You can imagine how uncomfortable this was for the white community. He did not care. And he was having some conversations in that community that were really hard to do, but he was doing it through history. No one could argue with the research that he had. And I watched Michael do that, and I consider him one of my greatest mentors. And when I did eventually come home, I remember thinking, what does that work look like where I'm from in a very different community? And one of the things I learned most from him is he was taking older houses that in some cases were slated to be demolished, and he would gut them, work with a work crew of community members, gut them, and then they would turn them into some kind of resource center or some kind of housing. And I think the thing that I learned more than anything is where a lot of people would see a deficit, he saw a resource. And I thought, like, okay, that's it, right? That's what we gotta do. So we have living room talks, we have craft nights, which are like, you come and you can do whatever craft, but it really doubles as a living room conversation and sometimes a support group and a survivors group. We offer space to a women's organization who has a violence support group, and that kind of came out of a lot of the churches didn't want to host that organization because they were doing LGBT also support groups for people coming out of domestic violence situations, and a lot of the churches said no, they couldn't go. So they were like, yeah, so now please come, right? So then all of the groups are held now there through that, and they're not necessarily. It's more like a partnership. So we try to create our space. You know, anybody who wants to use it can use it in that way. We have a lot of community aid resources, and we are currently working with an organization called Arkansas United, which I encourage you to look into. It's an immigrant rights organization, and it's specific to Arkansas, but they're doing a lot of amazing things. And so we are the place where their meetings in our county are hosted, and we work with them, and everything is bilingual in those meetings, and so they're really amazing because we always, there's a lot of translating going back and forth, but it's super powerful work that's happening there. I kind of joke about this to a lot of people. Y'all are from Real Place, so you will like understand. I also try to think of it as like a place where if something really horrible does come to the community and it becomes, there's a lot of violence, it is the place where you may not pull a knife or a gun on your neighbor once you have crossed into that space, right? And so I think that we have to build those spaces now. We cannot wait to build those spaces when the tragedy has hit, right? So we kind of think of it as so we have a lot of yarrow out front, just like lots of herbs, and I really like yarrow, and yarrow's like warrior herb, right? And it's like, come be warrior here. So, okay. So Jess had asked me to talk a little bit about like what we're learning and some of the thoughts that we're working with, and so that's where I'm going to focus the rest on. And please cut me off if I go too long because I sometimes ramble. But
you're good.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you some things that we're wrestling with, and I want to make it clear that I'm not saying like these are the things we figured out, because that would not at all be true. We are wrestling with them as we speak. So I sort of put this out here as something that I want to discuss with you all and have an unending sort of conversation around. And I should also say that usually I'm a person who kind of like hypes up stuff and I'm super prepared, but this flood thing, just to be super real and vulnerable, I'm in a little bit of a different mental space than I probably would have been had that not happened. So I'm just going to be very sincere about some of the things that are really on my heart. So I think one of the great things about rural work is I think rural understands being connected in a way that other and more urban areas don't. I think that you get that in your gut. You have to. It's literally survival, right, in a real community, that interconnected. So that's kind of what I want to keep going back to, and I want us to think about this interconnection as our greatest strength. I want us to be able to laugh about it a little bit, because we got to let go of some stress around it sometimes. And I want to kind of put out I don't want to say a call to action, because obviously you guys are doing that, like more sustained action. Because I think that's what we're maybe needing to struggle with right now, is not how we're going to act, but how we're going to keep acting over and over and over and over again, right? Like, how do we sustain ourselves? So the first thing about that we're struggling with is that this is messy work, and I've heard everybody say that before. And so I was thinking about, I think about spider webs a lot. I really like spider webs. And so I was thinking about how, sometimes when you're in a rural community, it's like, oh, this is a beautiful spider web, and the dew is on it, and the sun's shining through, and what a work of art, right? That's like sometimes how the web feels, right? landscape. And then sometimes it's like you're taking a walk in the woods and then you just like walk through a spider web and it's like stuck to your face and then you're trying to get it off and it's on your arm and you're like, this is so uncomfortable and oh my God, it won't leave, right? And I feel like that's kind of how small town work is sometimes. Sometimes you're just like trying to get, you're like, please, why are you so stuck to me? Oh my God. So anyway, so I think we have to laugh about stuff like that because sometimes it's beautiful and sometimes it's incredibly difficult. I think the second thing is resourcefulness, I think, is something. I have this friend named Sam who works with us at the McElroy House. She always has this great joke about, one of the great things about rural life is like, the tire shop is like also where you pay a water bill, and it's also the place you can get a haircut, and there's somebody who mends your clothes. It's like we're really good at putting like lots of things in one or two buildings in rural areas because it makes sense, right? I think that we all know how to do that. What I think we need to start thinking, and that's not a deficit, right? I don't think that's a deficit that we sometimes combine services together. I think that's actually a really big strength for this current time in our world. But what I want to encourage y'all to do is think about how your community does it and extend it and articulate it and be able to tell other people about it. Like why you do it that way, how it works, like bring it up to anybody who will listen about, these creative ways to use spaces. Okay, so I think the third thing that we really talk about a lot at the McElroy House when we're learning is something we tend to call moving at the speed of caregiving. So what we mean by that is birth, death, illness, right? Like the McElroy House has taken literally 10 years to get to where we are. By a lot of people's standards, that's probably taken too long. But part of that is because I've had 3 children since its inception. Carrie's had 2. We've all lost at least 1 or 2 relatives. We've all gone through marriages, divorces, changing partnerships, right? That's real, right? That's how life works. And I think the thing about it is if we see slowing down to care for someone who's dying, or to care for someone who needs us, if we see that as a diversion from our community work, we need to get real about what we mean when we say community work, right? Like, that is the work. It really, really, really is. Especially in a time when maybe your whole town's on fire, or the water has taken over half your town, right? Like, that is when, who are the caregivers? And that's all of us, right? So I really want to encourage people, to think about caregiving. And to look children in the eye. Look children in the eye and know that this is who we're accountable to. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk to you about, this is one of my favorite ones to talk about because I don't like it either, but build up your tolerance to discomfort. It's something we talk about a lot at the McElroy House, right? So I know when I lived in Little Rock, it was real easy for people to self-segregate around their ideologies. This group didn't want to work with this group. This group was too radical. This group was radical enough. Whatever, that kind of stuff. You cannot do that in a rural community because, you just wouldn't have anybody, right? You got to work. I mean, we joke at the McElroy House. It's like if we self-segregated around ideology, we'd have 1 person. We don't self-segregate. We have 6, right? But anyway, I think we just can't do that. And here's something I think is sometimes controversial, especially and people who may be more toward the left. I think we also have to sometimes work with people who we disagree with majorly. That is not easy. And I'm not talking about feel-good work together, be like, oh, it's no big deal. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we need each other. And I'm saying we have to figure out a way to do that. So we have to have some tools. And I think to do that, we have to figure out what our tools are so that we can show up in spaces. So we can show up in a space and be like, I don't agree with this. I feel so uncomfortable. But you still show up and you find a way to work together. You don't let that stop you. But to do that, I think you have to have skill sets. And so for me, here's mine. I'm not saying these should be yours, but I'm a Quaker, right? So I do Quaker meditation and prayer. I'm also a boxer, and Quakers are pacifists, so there's a little bit of a I don't always fit in that box very well, but I'm a boxer, and boxing is part of my spiritual practice. I like to punch people in the face. And I'm not joking. It is one of the best things, because I can take it to the ring and I can leave the ring, right? I don't know what your thing is. You got to figure out your thing, right? But there's got to be something that you do so you can show up in spaces and be real with people and not let your discomfort keep the work from happening. Okay, so I'm going to speed up because Jess is going to be the 5, so I'm just going to kind of get right toward the end. But I think the other thing is getting back to basics is something we've been talking about at the McElroy House a lot, and that is really thinking about how we meet people where they're at, which I learned from you all. I learned that from real organizing. And I think we have a lot of white supremacist organizing in my community. We always have had. One of the things I know from a journalist who's been interviewing one of the main organizers is that we have a white supremacist organizer in our community who literally looks for white people who have nowhere else to belong, who feel like they have been rejected by their community. That person literally looks for these people as potential recruitments, right? I want you to think about that because that's happened in your community too, I guarantee it. So I want you to think about that. We have to get back to basics. Can we all believe that we have the right to dignity? Cool, we will start there. We'll start right here and we'll find a way to work together. Again, it's hard, so you go back to your Quaker and your boxing, whatever else you have to do to be in that space and make it work and know your boundaries. And so I think, and I think also, sometimes that can be interpreted as that you're moving away from what you feel are your core truths and your values. And I'm not saying that. I'm actually saying live out your values, right? If we believe no one is disposable, we gotta prove it. We have to prove it. That is messy. It is super messy. But I do think it's possible to be very strong in what you believe and also believe that people aren't disposable. And I really believe it for my community because I know that there's a guy just waiting for us to kick somebody out so they can go recruit. Why? So, okay, so I think circling back to the spider web thing, small towns are really funny, right? Because everybody knows everybody dated or cousin dated or they're you know what I'm saying? Everybody knows everybody, right? But I think that's actually a really big strength if we can laugh about it, which I think we have to have a lot of ways to laugh about it and move through it. But I want to encourage you guys to think about this ability that we have in small communities to live in complication with other people is actually the thing that our whole nation and the world needs right now, is this ability to live in that complexity and hold on to your value systems while also living in that complexity. So that's a strength. And I want you guys to see it as a strength and not a weakness. I really do think it's a huge, huge, huge thing. And of course I kind of moved around on my stuff because I knew I would do this. But I think the last thing I want to talk about is, I hear a lot lately about ancestors and spirituality and sustaining yourself, and these I think have become some sort of buzzwords and sort of community. But so here's the part where I'm going to probably go way off script, and this is my flood thing. But so usually I'm a very measured speaker in some ways, but I literally feel kind of compelled, called, what I don't know the word for it, to tell you guys what I'm thinking about as I look through pictures of my town right now, and is that we need each other. I know that's said a billion times, but I want you to feel it, because that's kind of how I feel it right now. We need each other. And what does that mean, right? How do we build this sacred work? I know y'all are from rural areas, so y'all know some preppers. Maybe you do a little prepping yourself. Not the right-wing version, but just canned goods and all that stuff. I want us to also think about the sacred work of really preparing us to be more interconnected. So it's who in your community is good at mediating disputes? Have you had a conversation with them already? Don't wait. Don't wait until there's a fire or flood or somebody's lost their housing. Start thinking about these people. Who's good at mediating disputes? Who's really good at caregiving? Who's really good at, this is a church, so a loaves and fishes kind of deal. There's only this so little food and everybody gets fed, right? There's certain people who have that as a skill set. They can turn a meal out of nothing. Right? Who are these people in your community? Know them and have conversations. Build relationships with them. And I'm sure most of you already have, but I think do it even more and talk to other people who might not be doing it and really like encourage them to really build these networks and to really find a way. Like I have my friend Tafara always tells me, you don't have to be each other's best friends to work together. You don't even have to like each other. Just find a way to build and build. Because I think after a tragedy happens and things go back to normal before maybe the next one happens, you have like a couple of options. You can go back to siloing yourself, right? Or you can go back to being like that kind of uneven, everything's fine, we're fine, everything's fine. You know, like, I don't think those are our two options. I mean, I think there's like a third way in there. And I think that's like building, constantly building with your neighbors, with, you know, other people, being in spaces that make you uncomfortable, speaking what you believe and holding true to that without eroding someone else's dignity. I do think that's possible sometimes. And know your boundaries and stick to them like crazy, you know? And so that's kind of the last thing we're working on at the McElroy House is we just think like webs, build the web, sustain the web, support the web, like, you know, and just continue to build. And so the last thing I'm going to tell you guys is I have a friend named Carrie who is one of our main organizers at the McElroy House. I have anxiety a little bit sometimes, and so I'll like it. Carrie's always good at calming me down. And Carrie always says this, so I'm going to like tell you guys this, but she'll always say, this is really, really hard. And then she'll pause and be like, and you can do it. So that's what I want to say to y'all today.